This building was erected in the 1760s to the design of John and George Ensor. Prior to that there had been an earlier courthouse which appears on maps in the early 1700s. Around that time there was an accident within the building during a court hearing where a floor collapsed and 30 people were killed, including the judge and some of the prisoners, some of whom actually escaped. So the local authorities, namely the grand jury, decided it was time to build a new courthouse. So the Ensors was employed to design a new courthouse and were asked specifically to design it in such a way that parts of the older building were incorporated. That building was, as we see it today, pretty much. It was a rectangular building. The ground floor, where you see the arched windows today, were open. It formed an arcade, and on market day people sat in under that arcade or walked underneath it from the rain, and it would have been a very lively place. They decided in the late 1820s to build a new courthouse elsewhere within the town. Originally, one of Roscommon's Catholic churches was down in what we now know as Chapel Lane. That was a very small single-storey shed, basically. The decision was taken to sell to the Catholic Church, and in the early 1830s, Father John Madden would refurbish the building, and part of that involved building a belfry to the front and an extension to the back. The ground floor windows that we mentioned as an arcade were built up as windows as we see them today, and Mass was celebrated within. On the back wall you had an altar designed by Goldie of London. There were balconies on either side. The belfry to the front contained a bell which is now presently in the Sacred Heart Church. And interestingly, on the outside of the bell are the words Éireann go bragh, and that can be interpreted as maybe a way of letting people know that Ireland was on the up. Catholic emancipation had been granted. To the rear of the building you had a cross up until recently. It was made of stone, and beneath that you had a cruciform shape as well. During its time the building has also been used as a school, and some of its pupils included John Harrison, after whom the building was later called, and also Bishop Galuli, who was instrumental in building churches around the diocese. The building itself continued to be a church up until the early 1900s, when it was decided to build yet a grander church up in Abbey Street. Two windows from the church behind me here were taken from there and were reinstalled in the Sacred Heart Church. They're reputed to have bullet holes in it for some reason. Having been vacated by the church, it was a cinema, it was a social centre. Operas were held there, local plays were held there, and it continued to be a school and a form of the VEC, the Vocational Education Committee, and eventually was purchased in the late 1970s by the Bank of Ireland, who completely renovated the building. You also have an interesting little feature on the cupola, the copper-made dome there over the belfry. There is a little patch on it, and that little patch dates from 1966, when a few men decided to recall the anniversary 50 years before of the 1916 Rising. They duly punctured a hole in the cupola and stuck a tricolour out, hence the little patch over that. So it was never without a use and would have been known by many generations as the Harrison Hall, and in many ways was very dear to the people of Roscommon.